Hey everyone, I'm Peter Mancuso.
And I'm Brian Koch.
And this is our Coco Countdown Jamboree, where we...
It's a jamboree now?
It is. Now that we've done the 10 of them, we've earned the right to call it a jamboree.
On number 11.
And what is the Coco Countdown Jamboree, you ask? Well, I will tell you. It's where we watch and discuss every Pixar theatrically released film ever conceived by man in preparation of their 19th film, Coco, coming out November 22nd.
I'm sorry, Peter. It's the Coco.
It's the Coco, excuse me. It's the... I forgot. In some countries, it's different names. I'm thinking
I feel bad for them.
I think the Rwandan version is just called Coco.
Right. That's really weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is weird. Yeah. And today, we last episode was a milestone because it was the 10th film. But in a lot of ways, this feels like... In a lot of ways, this should have been the 10th film because it would have been like a really interesting landmark.
Yeah.
But today we're talking about the Toy Story 3. There's been two. So this is not only is at this point in the history, not only is Toy Story the only film to receive a sequel, but it's the only film to receive a second sequel.
Well put.
Yeah, thanks. I worked on it all day.
Okay.
So it's rare, and it probably. That's not true. I was gonna make a point about being the first animated trilogy, but I guess Shrek did beat it.
You mean theatrically released animated trilogy? Yeah, Shrek had.
It was not common.
It definitely wasn't common, especially. Well, I mean, when Toy Story came out, there wasn't even such a thing as theatrically released animated sequels very often. That's just when it was starting to be okay, Disney's then putting out Return of Jafar and all their direct-to-video sequels. So, the landscape really then kind of changed. I always find it so funny that the entirety of the Shrek series, all 4 movies, is in between Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3.
Did the fourth one come out in 2010?
Yeah, it came out before that.
Exactly 3 years apart between
I remember when I went to see Toy Story 3, because I went at midnight. It was my first midnight film. And
you were the youngest one there.
I was the youngest one there. Because I remember my parents were it's going to be all kids, whatever. No, I was the youngest one there. Because it's all people in college at that point. And they still had the placard for Shrek Forever After. They didn't change it yet. And it was the last time I got a child ticket at the movie theater, which is so fitting, isn't it?
A child's ticket?
A child's ticket.
How young can you have to be? Because you were 13, weren't you?
Or but my mom got them from the movie theater early, so they didn't see me when she purchased it, so...
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're the youngest one there. And then maybe in 40 years from now, when you're still going to see Pixar movies at the midnight, you'll be the oldest one there.
God willing.
Hopefully complete the circle.
Exactly.
But yeah. So why don't we kind of talk about, before we really get into the film itself, this film has an extremely interesting production history. And not just because of this film itself, but Toy Story 3 was kind of caught in the middle of this big contract dispute between Pixar, and it was kind of used as a bargaining chip.
In a sense, yeah. Well, not just Toy Story 3. Pretty much, they could make any sequel to the movies that Pixar had done, but this was the one that was actually
they were okay, we're starting production or development of a third Toy Story film.
There are you can find little things online about how.
Why don't we kind of go back to the beginning and explain?
But this is basically then. What was going on now was this is before Disney bought Pixar. This is when they were nearing the end of their contract.
2005 or so, right?
Yeah, around 2005 was when the purchase happened. So then, leading up to this, there were they were disagreeing over what to do in terms of extending and such. So if Pixar was to go off on their own and leave Disney, what Disney could do is they would reserve the right to make sequels to any of the films that Pixar had made for them, which included Toy Story.
Because they owned the films.
And Monsters, yeah. And so with Toy Story 3, and they were going to do it through sort of this other second tier animation studio, whatever you want to call it. Circle 7 Animation is what it was called.
Was it an in-house Disney thing, or were they outsourcing it? Was this
they made it themselves, but this was specifically designed to make sequels
to Pixar films. As opposed to just Disney Animation taking over.
And there have been, and I remember reading about this in the paper. They confirmed, or at least discussed at some shareholders meeting, a Toy Story 3 and a Toy Story 4. And the plot that really then kind of, as you may know, was originally going to be that Buzz gets recalled to Taiwan, and then the toys, led by Woody, have to go save him. also known as Toy Story 2 in reverse. So,
yeah.
cha-cha-cha, like, you know, really, they really, like, spent a lot of time figuring out what would carry over the themes of Toy Story 2 perfectly and be a good next installment. But anyway, yeah. So, like, there's not too much. You can find some concept art from it online. It's really interesting, to look into it. I remember there was another script that was floating around. That I don't know if it was for a Toy Story 3 or maybe even a Toy Story 4, where it's like Andy goes to Grandma's house, and it's like sort of like a mystery, like a quote-unquote murder mystery. I remember reading a script online years ago. Not really murder mystery, but like, you know, like designed around that sort of like story structure.
Sure.
There was one interesting thing where it would be like Scrabble tiles would be like left at the scene of the crime. I was like, that's a funny idea. But like, yeah, like I remember reading it years ago. I don't know if it was a real script, but like, yeah, like at the end of the day, it wasn't like up to par, definitely. But interestingly enough, it did have an opening that was sort of like playtime in this heightened action scenario, and it did end with like an incinerator sort of sequence, but like all the toys are screaming and stuff, and it's not like played up for emotion. It's just like really chaotic and loud and frenzied like every other animated movie. So,
yeah.
You know, so there's that. But of course they came to an agreement, Disney and Pixar, and right at the beginning is when John Lasseter approached Lee Unkrich and said, I want you to direct Toy Story 3. So he had been a co-director on Toy Story 2 and edited Toy Story.
Just out of curiosity, so like you just kind of jumped the steps. So after they made the deal,
yes.
When was the decision? Like, they had to decide if they would actually go forward with a Toy Story 3. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, but they wanted to make one.
Okay.
They had wanted to make one. And to do it themselves, of course.
Yeah.
And they didn't look at any of the Circle 7 stuff. Like, they just put it aside. They didn't want it to, like, influence them or whatever. And they went back. They retreated to the same place that they wrote. It's some, like cabin or whatever that they wrote the original Toy Story. Joe Ranft had unfortunately passed away by this point, so they made a toast to Joe Ranft. They watched the first two movies to, like, sort of get inspiration, and they were like, oh god, these are really good. How are we gonna follow this up? Like, we're really not gonna. And they're like, well, you know what? If anyone could, like, we're the idiots who made those movies. So if anyone could do it, it's us. So then they started up. They figured out, like, sort of a story, and then it's that story treatment that, like, Andrew Stanton I think is mainly credited with having written. That then Michael Arndt came from fresh off Little Miss Sunshine and wrote the screenplay of. So I think Michael Arndt was the first writer to be nominated for an Oscar for his first two scripts for both Best Original Screenplay and then Best Adapted Screenplay for Toy Story 3. So both he was nominated for in a row. Yeah, because it's adapted from the short story or treatment or whatever you want to call it.
That Stanton.
Yeah, it seems kind of weird to me too, but
wait, that's confusing.
Yeah.
So, but every script is based off of a treatment.
I know, but like I guess if you didn't write the treatment yourself, yeah, I guess. But like, yeah, it seems a little bit weird to me. But anyway, like,
sure,
whatever.
Okay.
Like, sure. So, yeah, so then they worked on it. As far as I know, of course, Toy Story 2 had such a tumultuous, like, production history in terms of, like, the rush. But, like, after all was said and done, with Circle 7 Animation and such, Ed Catmull, when talking about the production in, like, Creativity Inc., says that it did go very smoothly. Like, smoother than any, like, other Pixar movie up until that point. To the point at which he said to them, like, wow, I can't believe, like, how like, easily everything went. And they almost took it as, like, an insult, because it's, like all the movies they like, make a bad version of, and then they make it better and such, so it's like, oh, God, is it good that then we didn't have, like, a huge problem? Like, uh-oh.
Yeah, it raises the question of, like...
Yeah.
Like, I know, for me, in, like, my own work... Yeah. Like, things that I was really worried about ended up being... But the things that I felt secure in were the ones that didn't end up as well. Mm-hmm. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like that's a very interesting thing of, like, this went really well.
Oh, yeah.
There must be a problem. Like, right. You know what I mean? Like, because it begs the question, like, like, the reason why there were so many problems is because we were really risking a lot, or whatever, and, like, why was it so easy?
Right, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so it took quite a while, because I remember reading in the paper about Toy Story 3, and I didn't realize when
10-year-old Brian reading the newspaper.
Yeah. I didn't realize it wouldn't be made by Pixar or anything like that I didn't understand, or they didn't even make clear in the article. But I remember going to, like, actually they would have put it in, like, 2004 because it would have been before, like, the buyout. So I remember going to The Incredibles and thinking I was going to get a trailer for Toy Story 3 at that point, It took many, many years to actually.
It wasn't until Up that we got a teaser.
It wasn't until Up that we got the teaser trailer, and it wasn't until the Toy Story 3D double feature that we got the first trailer with clips from Toy Story.
Was that, by the way, something we haven't talked about?
Yeah.
At this entire time. Was Pixar's tradition of making teasers like original content for just the teasers?
When did it start? We
haven't talked about it at all.
We just haven't talked about it at all. Yeah, no, good point.
And was this the last one?
No, they've continued doing.
Oh, they did it for Monsters University.
They definitely did it for Monsters University.
Inside Out, kind of.
It called back to the Monsters Inc. teaser with the narrator. But yeah, they did it for Toy Story 3. I know they'll definitely do it for Toy Story 4 because they love doing however many animations with those characters as they can. But yeah, they usually do it sometimes depending on how close it's coming. They'll just sort of jump to theatrical. Like Coco seems to use clips from the movie.
That movie's gonna die, but that's a different discussion.
But partly because it's the second Pixar movie to be coming this year, so it's only a few months away, so it kind of makes sense to give a fuller trailer right off the bat. So that I think that's why.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, no, they had a really lovely trailer for that. It was if you remember with the competing logos for the film between Woody and Buzz's, Woody
the
makes
teaser,
a makeshift one, and then Buzz has So that was a really cool one. And then, the trailer, which I remember I went to the double feature to see on opening day, and then there was a power outage at the theater. And I was like, oh my god, I'm never going to see footage from this movie! So we had to go back the next day, and then finally I was like, it was so surreal.
You couldn't just watch on the internet?
I was like, oh, no, Peter. This was back in the day when a trailer wouldn't get released online always when it was shown in front of something. Well, actually, I think by then it usually then kind of was, but with this they were specifically holding it off until the end of the 2-week limited engagement that they were going to show.
They want people to go because crazy people like you will go just for the.
Oh well, I would have gone anyway because I'm super crazy.
Yeah,
but So yeah, so then that's what they did, and then finally it was so surreal seeing this is what Andy looks like grown up. This is, oh my god, this is what the animation's gonna look. Oh man, so I waited my whole childhood for this movie, waited so long, and then it came.
And now that you've seen it, there's nothing left to look forward to,
except Toy Story 4.
Thank
God, I was this close to falling out of sorts.
We should talk about Toy Story 4 in this video.
Well, yeah,
but I don't know if it should be when it should be talked about.
Probably near the end. We'll talk about it on its own terms,
Yeah.
But yeah, so after all of this waiting for how could it possibly live up to what I had hoped for? And then it did. Because it's the greatest movie ever made.
Are you saying it's your favorite? Are you saying it's your favorite movie ever made, or it's the objectively greatest film ever?
It is my favorite movie ever made, and it is objectively the greatest movie ever made.
Now, why is that?
Because it's amazing. How could I possibly boil it down? It's the perfect capper to the trilogy. It works so well on its own. It has to then get so much done in terms of not only doing service to the rest of the series, but it also has to reintroduce these characters after so many years and sort of end their story, or at least end this part of their story, given the forthcoming Toy Story 4. But yeah, just everything, it has the comedy, it has the drama, it has the action, the adventure. It's an escape movie. It's everything. It is the perfect movie. I remember seeing there's a parody poster online that said replacing Toy Story 3. It says the perfect movie instead, and it the tagline is it's so unfair that this won't win Best Picture, something like that. I'm like, that's right. That's exactly, because this was also nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars.
Yes.
And in a very good year for the Best Picture category, I will concede, but it still should have won because it's the greatest movie ever made.
It's the greatest.
So it should win any year.
So if someone, I can see you saying it's your favorite.
Yeah.
So if someone came up to you and was like, Citizen Kane or The Godfather is the greatest film ever made.
No.
What would you say?
I would say, were you born yesterday? You're wrong. You're just saying that because that's what you heard in film school. No, but this is the truth. This is the movie. It has so much passion behind it. Not a single frame is wasted. It's so well paced. Every time I watch it, I can't believe how fast it goes. And yeah, it's amazing. But let's try to get into some detail about it, because we've done a lot of background. So let's get into the nitty gritty. of Toy Story 3.
Brian,
I'm sorry, I misspoke.
Have you been in Rwanda recently? Because that's what it's called there.
Oh, of course.
But here in the States, it's the Toy Story 3.
The Toy Story 3. I'm so sorry. So yeah.
So what do you want to specifically get into?
Well, let's talk about how they started off, because like I was telling you, like, this is such a huge movie. It has to have 3 openings. One, to like be like a really then fun sequence in which we're reintroduced to the characters, because what they realized when they were trying to then go through, how do we start this movie? The audience has been missing these. It's been like 11 years since the last one. They just want to have some fun, and you want to like give that to them. So the first scene,
with great character introductions,
great character introductions. Everyone has their moments. So just this big blow, and it's all like these callbacks to the playtimes from both the first one and
it's
the second
all the
one.
major characters that will be part of the ensemble.
Exactly. And it sets up, interestingly enough, like the way that like it sort of like ends with then like they're gonna get killed by evil Dr. Porkchop, and like it's like sort of putting forward this idea, they're about to die. Like sort of a recurring thing throughout this movie is being close to death, near death experiences.
Yeah,
they have that. They have like when they're getting thrown away and Woody thinks they like get crushed in the garbage truck. They have, of course, like Buzz, like the TV lands on him, and of course we have the incinerator scene, which we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you have that scene, which is great, and then the "You've Got a Friend in Me" home video montage, which contextualizes the playtime. So it's not just then they went all Hollywood on us. They're just doing the action. No, what they're showing us is an externalization of the playtime and how it feels for the toys. Because this movie, more than any of the others, talks about like how great it feels to like be played with, and how terrible it is all these years going not being played with. So yeah, we have then all of like the home video, and of course the "You've Got a Friend in Me" song by Randy Newman comes back into play, and so like wonderfully, hauntingly ending on "Our friendship will never die."
Yeah.
Cut to black, and then we're in the present day. What a bold choice. I love it. Gives me chills every time. Really, really well done. And then you
did seem to shiver.
I did shiver.
Uncontrollably.
I started convulsing.
Yeah.
It was really a sight to see. But yeah, and then we see the characters for the first time in the present day. And it's like, they're doing another like cute little miss. What is it? They're trying to get Andy to like look at them again, like briefly, and it doesn't really even work. So that's where they're at now. So their spirit broke.
So it's a great contrast.
Great contrast. So like already like there's been a whole arc.
Because not even just contrasting, obviously, watching him play with them.
Yeah.
But more the contrast, I would say even more contrast with like, so there's 3 openings.
Yes.
The first opening.
Yeah.
Where it's like this glamour and adventure, whereas now it's like all they can hope for. And it's
he held me. He actually held me.
It's epitomized by that line where it's like, that's like why does Rex get to be the one? He gets held. What has he done to deserve it?
He beat the Buzz Lightyear video.
He did, and he knew. And
in real life, yeah. But yeah, so I think that's part of the reason why then this is able to, like, of course it works best in the context of all of them. But because of that, this movie like sets up like the themes and how important their relationship is to Andy within itself. So that's really then well done. But yeah, so then they do that. It's also it does beg to mention how Michael Arndt did write this, and this is like the first time aside from like Brad Bird, which like he was like chumming with John Lasseter, but like this is like the first time they really kind of recruit outside talent to like write the movie, because like fresh off then like the indie film Little Miss Sunshine was this grounded movie about this family and like their interactions, and I guess that it makes sense to really then reach out to him because he was then really good in that movie about giving everyone an arc and giving everyone something to do and having it feel very real, despite there are some like crazy circumstances that happen in that movie, particularly pertaining to the grandfather, which I won't go into detail if you haven't seen the movie. You've never seen the movie. Okay, so I won't go into detail, but it gets pretty crazy to the point that like the audience it could be like, will they keep buying this? But it's done so well and the characters sell it. So it's good. You got him to do emotionally grounded stuff that even in zany situations it'll come across very genuine. So he's a really then good choice. And interestingly, I will drop this little tidbit that with Toy Story 4 they're doing that as well. They recruited outside writers. It's Rashida Jones and Will McCormack, I think, who previously collaborated on Celeste and Jesse Forever, which is this movie that I haven't seen, but I will see. It's on the list. In preparation, of course. So that's interesting. So that's also then sort of like a romantic comedy, and like Toy Story 4 is supposed to then, you know. So that makes sense. So just interesting that, because I don't think they've done that for any of their other movies. So just sort of an interesting thing. Yeah. Especially since, like, when you take into consideration that, like, this is Toy Story, so you would think they would want it to be like as in-house, and we're gonna like take care of this as like you want. Yeah. So like that could really then be like a misstep of like, well then why are we getting like these other people, you know? So just I guess like it helps it feel fresh and like have its own identity in a certain way, and it helps really then up the emotional stakes this time around. Yeah. So yeah. Also, like, all of the callbacks in the movie, like, what's so great about them is, like, rather than remind you, hey, it's like before, all of them are there to show you how much things have changed. Because you have the army men, and instead of, like, oh, then in the first one, then they're go off doing their thing with the baby monitor. Now there's only 3 of them left, and then they leave because they don't want to get thrown away. Or you have Buster, who's like what's this peppy young puppy that Woody would ride around, and now he's old. Or you have the lines from Toy Story 2, the closing lines, the hopeful closing lines are repeated so brilliantly here, because it did sort of then seem like, okay, like when it all ends, I'll have Buzz Lightyear keep me company for infinity and beyond. So, like, that was then sort of like the closure that the films had up until now. It was like, oh, why even then do a Toy Story 3? So I think it's really important to reference that idea of, like, yeah, like, we're still holding on to that sentiment, but, like, now the day's here. So, like, really then, like, confronting that, I think, was then very smart. So, again, all the callbacks are just to be like, look at how different the world is now. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, you could speak. I feel like I've been going on for like 5 minutes. Yeah,
for those of you who, because you're listening, I actually have jury duty, and I left and came back, and Brian was still just talking, so I was able to come in, and I was happy to know that he was able to talk. I'm kind of interested to see like where we can guide this, because I have nothing specific I want to address. Okay. Well, I guess something I wanted to bring up, maybe this is hard, because any like issue I may have, you're gonna, I know exactly what you're gonna say. Like, there's no, like, so I could try to bring up certain things.
Well, no, you should bring them up, regardless.
This isn't necessarily a quality determining issue. Yeah. But something I noticed, and I couldn't put my finger on it, and then I realized, like, oh, that makes obvious sense, is the writing of this film feels different than the other two in noticeable ways. Like, I feel like the characters are talking in ways that they haven't before.
Interesting. Like expand on that.
Well, but the reason being is that the first two were primarily written by Andrew Stan. Right. And now it's Michael Arndt who's a completely different kind of writer. Again, not in like a better or worse way, but it just feels kind of different, the approach, the way the characters are saying things, and I can't point to anything specific, but I just wanted to get your ideas on that.
Like what I would say about how I feel about it is like the characters. No, I think the characters still sound the same. It's just something about like the way it's structured and the way like comes off like a little bit differently. I don't know, like in a good way, but like. Yeah, I can't really, like, because it does feel, like, authentic to how they would interact before. It is dwelling a little bit more on, like, sort of, like, the seriousness of their situation, and I think fittingly so, given what's going on. But yeah, it still, like, feels like them, like when they're, like, you know, like
the characters don't feel false. Yeah, I don't mean to say that they feel false. They just feel like it's being, like, it's almost like if this were a true story, and you told the first two parts of the story, and then I came and told the last part. It's like the same story, and the characters still do the same things, but like I'll tell it in like a kind of different way. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, not change the information, but just like the way I present the story. Yeah, it kind of the thing. Like, both of them are like good. It's just like different styles. Sure, of telling it, right? Sure. Does the film? Well, I know the answer. Okay. Does the film ever feel like, I don't want to use the word repetitive, but like because at a certain point, Brian's like starting to twitch. Brian actually started to twitch. Yeah. Because there's a lot of, you brought up a good point talking about how like there's a lot of like near death experiences. Not only in that, there's a lot of scenes where just bad shit happens to them, and there's always a line, "Is everyone okay?" like there's probably 3 or 4 times that there's a scene like that. Mm-hmm. To the point where it starts to get old. And like there are parts of this movie where it's just uninterrupted like bad shit happening. And I guess to a point, like I understand the point. Like basically, once they get into the dump,
the tri-county
the garbage truck.
Oh, the garbage truck. Yeah.
Well, I guess not so because they have the thing with Buzz almost dying. Sure, I'll concede that. But basically, once you get to the dump, it's just a lot of like, oh shit. Okay, we survived that. Oh shit. Okay, we survived that. Oh shit. And it's just like a continuous like series within like 5 minutes of just like. Oh shit! Okay, we solved that small issue. Oh shit! And there's a continuous stream of these like, is everyone okay? Yeah, if we just stick together. Oh no! And it's like this, So in the film, the film kind of for me has, to a fault, I think at times it kind of and I understand it's trying to reinforce this idea of how tough it's tough to be a bug. Okay. But at least I don't feel like I'm getting stabbed, which is good. In the fucking back, but
okay.
But there is also like at a certain point in the film, like I do like this idea that it becomes a heist film. Yeah. But then again, in a similar way, the film then just becomes an unraveling of their very intricately planned out escape.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I kind of stop, like I don't want to say caring. But like it's like everything else has been so effortless that like I kind of like the stakes have been a little lowered because I know like, and not just like in a movie where like obviously it's gonna have a happy ending, but like within even these like little segments, like you're doing this with such ease. Mm-hmm. Like you literally like, I'm surprised you were even in prison to begin with. You guys are so smart.
Okay.
Like Woody was able to escape in the beginning. Like these are the smartest sentient living creatures, human or toy, to ever have lived. And these aren't bad things, but they in a sense, like I feel like there could have been a stronger structure to the story. Like there could have been a stronger version of the story that had maybe some more beats in it, whereas the beat of them escaping is just one long beat.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'll respond to both of those. The first thing you said about like the repetitive nature towards the end, I think it's really only like once they get to the point where.
I also want to just add about like also not just near the end.
Go ahead.
You have like the stuff with the playroom, like like them getting all beat up in the playroom.
Yeah.
There's other parts. So I don't want to just confine to the end. That's like one example.
Okay. So the playroom, I mean, we get that one sequence, and then later when Woody comes back, like, we see it again for, like, 10 seconds just to establish, like, Woody understanding it. So that's totally fine. And as far as, like, the stuff at the dump, like, there's the part with the shredder when then they save Lotso, and then, like, right after that is when we get to, like, the conveyor belt scene with the button. So, like, I don't think they overdo it at all. Like, I think there's trauma, like heavily throughout like those minutes, but like I don't think they're like beating a dead horse at any point. But in regards to then your other point about what was the other thing you said? I'm forgetting.
But I was saying that was like one example of kind of like certain. Actually, no, I take that back. What I was talking about is like, for example, some of the beats play out a little too long. Like I wish there was more kind of like not necessarily twisted turns, but like for example, like the escape. It kind of feels like one long beat. It's like feels just like one beat played out for like 20 minutes.
So what I would say about the escape is that the escape has a sort of like interesting function in the movie because it's kind of like I remember reading someone like beat it out. Like the structure, like the act structure of Toy Story 3 Online. And that like the end of Act 2, which is like the end of like sort of like the escape, that's usually like a low point in a movie, but in this it's like a high point. I think it's because like the Act 3 is just so like devastating that then sort of like then this whole like climax with the escape is just supposed to be like they're all firing off on all cylinders. And it's why is they're like so good at like then getting out. Is because then now, like, they're not dealing with the fact that then Woody left or, like, that they have nowhere else to go. They know that, like, Andy still cares about them and Woody's back. And they have motivation to get out there, like, before Andy leaves. So that's sort of what's then setting up their drive. But, like, yeah, then the fact that then they're all together. It's sort of, like, it's like the pseudo-climax. It's sort of like it has, like, this function in which it's mirroring in Toy Story. You had the escape from Sid's house, and in Toy Story 2, then getting out of Al's apartment. Like,
there was escaping.
So they're always escaping, but like in those, like those are like kind of like the real climaxes, sort of, and it's making you feel like, okay, so then it's this, but then all their fabulous Rube Goldbergian then sort of like antics, but like this time that's just to make you think, like, oh, okay, so this is the part in the Toy Story movie, and then it's gonna then be over, and then it's giving you this like sort of like false sense of security. So it's more just like a function of like, here's a lot of the jokes, here's a lot of the memory, here's Mr. Tortilla Head, here's like Barbie and Ken and the bookworm thinking that Ken is wearing heels, and getting a lot of like the comedic moments out of like this like stretch of the movie, and then like trauma. Right.
And it's just trauma.
Yeah.
Devastation. That's interesting you brought up how, like, oh, this is the part of the Toy Story movie where blank. I feel like this movie kind of falls into, like, you talk about these references and callbacks and, like, how they really used to show, like, the difference. The specific things, that's true. Like, if it's referencing, like, the dog or it's, different things. But I think it borrows a lot from the other two in some, not negative ways, but, like, it feels a little like that's what you did in the other one, and there isn't much different here. It's just you just did it again.
Like what?
Well, example, the one I was able to verbalize when we were watching it was basically what you call like Lotto's Fate. Lotto's Fate.
Okay, so that brings me into this whole sort of.
I didn't realize that question had a whole essay prepared over there.
This brings me to a subsection.
Oh my God.
Which I would like to affectionately call why Toy Story 3 isn't a rehash of Toy Story 2. Because this is a school...
That's what I'm trying to say.
This is a school of thought that has emerged, and I think it's because of YouTube user Your Movie Sucks. I'm going to call him out right now. So,
he's watching this right now.
He's watching this, and he's going to be quaking in his boots, because I'm going to take him down. But yeah, so like... Basically, like, I remember when his review then came out, he's then talking about, like, oh, it's not really that good. Like, Best Picture nomination, come on. And then he was talking about how it's just Toy Story 2 again. Your nostalgia goggles are on. And then a lot of people were like, he's right. Oh, my God, my nostalgia goggles were on. I can't believe I just watched this movie and took it at complete face value and listened to everything that had to say. And, like, I totally got attached to it. Now I'm going to listen to this guy's review and take it at face value and attach myself to it. But anyway, so, like then people then started to talk about, oh, it's just a rehash. So... what are the things about this movie that are quote-unquote the same as Toy Story 2? I'll list them off. These are the things. Number one.
I think we can call for jury duty. Will you still be here?
Yeah, of course I'll be
deliberation.
Number one, starting off with this sort of like action-oriented sequence that's like a simulation of some sort. That's one. Number two is a flashback to a human owner who like used to love a toy and then the toy got abandoned. First it was Jesse, and then we have with Lotso. Obviously, with Lotso, it ends up, like, really then sort of differently. And you could see stages of, like, Jesse in the sense that then he was, like abandoned, and, like, sort of Woody in the first Toy Story, and then he was lost. So, like, I feel like, in many ways, that's just, like, sort of to establish how he was in similar circumstances, but yet he acted so differently, and it's, how our antagonist reflects our protagonist. So that's the second one. And then the third one is a grandfatherly character who... it ends up being the villain, isn't made clear to be the villain at first, and then has a comeuppance at the hands of a human. Those are the three things. And, like, other than that, of course, there are, like, themes that are carried over from the predecessors, like any good sequel should do, about, like, of course, like, the toy's relationship with the owner, which is the thread through all of them, and then moving on, and, yeah. And we already talked about, kind of, in the Toy Story 2 discussion, so I won't, like... belabor the point much here, and how Toy Story 2, in many ways, like by the very end of it, is about making sort of coming to terms with the fact that like
you don't know what's gonna happen.
You don't know what's gonna happen, but also just that like things are going to change, and you can embrace that. But of course, it's so different when that day finally comes, which they lampshade with Woody saying, "We all knew this day was coming," and him goes, "Yeah, but now it's here." And like what more needs to be said than that? So I think like it is then very different. It's not just rehashing those themes that were established in Toy Story 2. Because Toy Story 2, yeah, it was much more about like being broken, and potentially then Woody then thinking about this idea of, okay, like maybe there's another way for me that doesn't involve like staying with Andy. But in this one, as if sort of like a response to what he learned in that one, he's more like closely
almost
connected dogmatically connected to Andy, to the point that the thought of a life without him he views as selfish, as he expresses to the other toys at the daycare when he leaves. So that's what I have to say about that.
Okay. The guy was guilty, by the way. We decided he was guilty.
Jury duty? Yeah.
Yeah, we decided.
Yeah.
You bring that, let's touch on this topic.
Okay.
It's hard to remember because we've done so many of these now.
Yes.
I don't know how much we got into this when we talked about Toy Story 2. Like my ideas about like
the duology.
The duology, but not so much the duology, but the reason why I feel comfortable leaving out Toy Story 3. This idea that I find the abstract concept more interesting than the thing. Right. And whenever you talk about like you kind of said it there, so to kind of pair what you said, you'll always say when we talk about this like, oh, Toy Story deals with the ideas of coming to grips, like things will change one day, you have to be ready to accept that. But then in this one, you actually face it, right? Mm-hmm. As if to say like, isn't that better? And for me, no. I find myself again gravitating more towards that image of Woody looking down the empty air shaft or the air vent or whatever it is.
Yeah.
The air vent, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And for me, that in a lot of ways, and again, this is trying to compare two giants.
Uh-huh.
So this is not trying to say that one's great
and there's plenty of merit to this, I think.
But for me, that image of that empty, cold, soulless is scarier than the incinerator.
Mm.
For me, because I think everybody. I think this is true for a lot of people.
Yeah.
That the fear of the unknown is worse. Mm-hmm. It's almost in some way easier to come to grips with the idea of death when it's right in front of you, as opposed to an abstract. Not so much death, but just our fears itself. Like I know, at least for me, most of the time when I'm really stressed about something, or not even just stressed, but like afraid, like actively afraid.
Yeah.
It's usually always in the build up to it, and then there's the minute. Like a great example is like when I used to do theater.
Uh-huh.
I would be so nervous, like the hour leading up to the show. As soon as I stepped out on stage, I wasn't nervous anymore. As the second I stepped out on stage, because it was I don't know if that necessarily applies, but this idea of fear, not to get douchey here, but like FDR said, the only thing you have to fear is fear itself, and for me that's a bit more potent and a little more interesting. So not to say that this isn't interesting, but it's interesting that what is interesting is that you'll often, when talking about the idea, you'll always follow it up with, but now it's here, as if to the next logical implication is, and because that's more immediate, that's more compelling in some way. And for me, I don't necessarily think so. I can see why it is for people, and I'm not trying to say like any kind of definitive statement, but for me personally, that's kind of what I take away.
Like more compelling isn't the way I would put it. More challenging is the way I would say, because it is interesting that you say that. Like sort of then just like the build up to it, because I think in many ways like I can agree with that, but like that said, this idea with like coming to terms with the fact that we're all going to die someday. Like right now I could be like, ugh. But okay, well it'll happen at some point in the future.
Yeah,
and and then I'll be like, okay, well back to my life. Do. Oh look, the Wheezy is singing with the Barbies. Yay! Yeah. Like, but then like when that day is actually then going to be coming, I'm gonna be like, oh my god.
Yeah. You know what I guess it comes down to?
Yeah.
Is if we're reading the film about the fear of death versus death, or the concept of dealing with fear. Mm-hmm. Because if it's the latter, I think Toy Story 2 is more successful. But if we're dealing with strictly just like I'm afraid of death versus death is here, or to quote Donkey from Shrek, death is coming. Oh, that's Mushu in Mulan. I'm thinking two different anime performances.
Very different performances.
Very different. He has such nuance to his performance.
You never know it was him.
Yeah. I thought it was a real dragon or a real donkey.
Yeah.
But so you see what I mean? Like if you're reading it from that perspective of like the primary thing is this idea of like the end of a toy's life. Sure. But I think for me the thing that I'm gravitating towards more is like not so much that he's willing to ignore death, but the fact that like there's this overwhelming anxiety that he has to learn to accept and deal with, whatever it's about. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm not really sure which one is quote unquote right. If either of them is more right, I don't know. I don't really know.
I think it's super interesting to ponder. And I know at one point you had expressed to me, you often would talk about the duology between Toy Story and Toy Story 2. But at one point you were like, well, what, like, just food for thought, the duology of Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3.
Yeah.
Because those themes, like, really, like, more directly connect. Because, like, it's
because the original Toy Story really is not that dense of a film. It really is not.
It's the buddy movie. It's establishing Woody and Buzz as
Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3 I think are more effective as a duology.
Yeah.
Not to backpedal on what I've been saying about the abstract versus the concrete.
But the way they're connected.
They're much more connected.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, Toy Story does kind of feel out of place. In a way. In a way, in terms of the thematics of it. Because the first one, the thematics are more about, like, I don't really know. I think when we did our Toy Story one, we had trouble kind of talking about, like, what the theme is.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is just sort of like the this notion of jealousy, of course, and this idea of
these are much more existential.
Yeah. Which, like, exactly. So, yeah, when thinking about it in that way, it is then really then sort of different. What we've come to, and like you still have elements of the first one in the sense that you have the toys kind of falling back into their old roles of distrusting Woody in a chaotic situation, like sort of like clinging to like something that they know before in these familiar roles. So we have that, and of course the claw callback, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
So good.
How do we feel about the Deus Ex Machina?
For
those of you who don't know, I'm sure you all do.
Divine interference, hand of God at the climax. All hope is lost, and then something comes back.
Basically the point being why I raise it is a lot of people criticize. Not this movie, but just like in general, the use of a Deus Ex Machina in the sense that it kind of removes a culminating critical choice.
Right.
Like even because I guess an argument you could make for a film that has one is like people will always point to whatever the last thing the main character did before the Deus Ex Machina. That's the culminating critical choice. Yeah. But like if it's not directly tied to the climax, like in the most direct way possible.
But Woody's culminating critical choice is getting in that Sunnyside box, getting in the box to go to Bonnie's. Like this doesn't rob him of his chance for a culminating critical choice. In the same way,
I would say the climax is really the. I hesitate to even say the incineration is the climax if you really think about it.
It's sort of I take it.
It's the biggest set piece, but like
it's like sort of the opportunity for epiphany. Like with him watching Andy with his mom is also like opportunity for epiphany. But like I feel like that provides the grounding for like. These toys are like they've become my family, and when he looks at the picture of Andy playing with the toys while he's in the box and then looks down at the toy, like he's directly reflecting on the incinerator scene. So I think it like lends itself directly to the opportunity for epiphany. But yeah, it is like a literal like kind of like ex machina in a sense. But of course it's established that like this whole idea of the fascination between the aliens and the claw, and you see them like when they're separated from the rest of the group. Like get hit by like this apparatus, and you know that they've been and they even established earlier in this movie they have a little joke about like the little truck that resembles the claw with it. So they remind you of this whole idea. So in case
you forgot about the
in case you forgot about it. But yeah, I don't think like even though it's inadvertent, not caused by our protagonist, like it's in the same way that. Like, oh, then, like, I realize that there's more stuff in the stuff I'm going to do section, but my culminating critical choice is going to save Russell.
Don't bring up that book.
Don't bring up that book. I'm just saying.
I don't want to talk about that book.
There's a difference between opportunity for epiphany and culminating critical choice. And so it doesn't, like, then rob us.
This whole idea of story structure is very, like, it's more of, like, a way to help us understand.
Of course. No, but that said, it is important that our protagonist is active. And they are.
Oh yeah, I would say Woody is.
Oh, definitely.
I'm trying to think of other things. Cause I really want to talk about the things that I feel like don't work, because I'd rather, as opposed to just us sitting around just talking about, oh, I love this part and this part. I'm trying to think of other things that maybe didn't work for me in the fullest that we can then talk about.
Yeah, no,
but I'm trying to think
of any.
There's definitely more I want to talk about. I'm blanking, so there's something you want to bring up. Let's do that, and then I'll probably think of something.
Well, again, getting back to this idea of, how much it needs to do and, reintroducing everybody, giving a satisfying ending, I find it really impressive that it's able to pay off, the little Buzz and Jessie strand that was established at the end of Toy Story, the very end of Toy Story 2, very brief. They could have ignored that, but it becomes a subplot that carries through the whole movie.
Yeah.
Which, I can't believe they have time to do, and I can't believe they have time to give Barbie and Ken a subplot as well.
She might be my favorite character in the movie.
Barbie?
Yeah, I don't know why.
Barbie is awesome. Yeah.
I don't know why, but I mean, I do not to say that it's that much of a stretch, but
Jodie Benson has.
I always loved her. I like Barbie. I loved Barbie in Toy Story 2.
Yeah. Well, this is great because she really does go through a full arc in the sense that then she's abandoned by Molly, then feels down in the dump, and then meets Ken, then gets so happy, so completely then head over heels. And then, of course, as soon as she realizes that he's, betraying her friends, nope, not, give me my scarf back, joins her friends in prison, and then helps them escape, and then, sort of then takes advantage of Ken's love for her. Very, very commanding of the situation.
It's such a great scene.
Such a great scene with not the neighbor.
When she, twists his head around.
Yeah.
And oh, it's really funny.
Yeah, and then she saves the and they reestablish the daycare, and Ken has then a satisfying redemption too, and making Sunnyside cool and groovy for everybody.
It can be cool and groovy.
Yeah. So not only it has to then pay service to the whole cast from the other movies, but then it also has Barbie and Ken, and it also has all the other daycare toys and Bonnie's toys. There are so many characters in this movie, and I feel like I get a sense of all of them, which is really, really impressive. So yeah.
Yeah.
and Michael Keaton is great as Ken, of course.
Let me ask you a question, because going back to this idea of the plot.
This idea of the plot. Yeah.
Yeah. What is a plot?
Yeah.
What's a story? Who are we? Is
this
real?
Is that what you want to ask? Okay.
No. The idea of this plot.
Yeah.
And what I was saying before about how some of it feels either repetitive or like certain beats kind of being extended, kind of like stretching things out.
Yeah.
How do you think it compares to the original Toy Story in that it feels this movie's about an hour and a half, a little more, right? Like hour 40 maybe.
Well, I'm pretty sure that Toy Story 1 being 81 minutes, each movie after was an additional 11 minutes.
Okay.
Compared to the last.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the sense that Toy Story is probably 20 minutes shorter, roughly.
Right.
And it feels like more happens in the original Toy Story.
You think so?
Yeah. And I could with this idea of the whole I keep going back to the idea of the beat being stretched out. Mm-hmm. The point being is that not as much I feel happens. That's one example of things kind of being stretched out longer than they maybe need to be. I feel like there's an 80-minute movie in here.
I guess
that's 100 and however many minutes.
But I feel like while Toy Story 3 does very much succeed at focusing on Woody, and at the end of the day, it's his story, and it doesn't let anything get in the way of that. Not these new characters or anything; they're there, but it does. This is such a beloved cast, and it does give them a chance to shine as well. Which the first Toy Story sort of does that, but I think Toy Story 2 is when it really started to get into Rex and Mr. Potato Head and all these they're real main characters, and they're really in the forefront. Yeah, and we love them.
And also going back to Toy Story 2, I feel like more happens in both of those films.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you really look at it, see the forest for the trees, they're gonna get thrown out, and then they go to the daycare, and then the next major, I'm talking major beats. Mm-hmm. Woody leaves, and then they find out about the bad stuff, and then Buzz gets turned, and then they're locked up, and then Woody has to come back and save them, and then they escape.
But
and they get to the trash.
If I were then to talk about Toy Story 2, then it's Woody's arm is ripped, Al takes him, the toys go to find him, Woody realizes.
But there's a lot of I don't mean twist turns of Darth Vader's Luke's father kind of twist, but when I say twists and turns, I mean beats. I guess I can't think of the better word.
But
a lot more. There's a lot more I think reversals and power plays when they're at Al's. apartment, then I would say happens at Sunnyside.
Okay, I can see that. But
like a lot more kind of happened. Like a lot of the dynamics, they're kind of changing a lot. Whereas the dynamic is basically at Sunnyside. It's great until it's not. Yeah. And now it's just not. And now they just need to escape.
Well, if I were to... Yeah, I know what you mean. If I were to say... It is interesting, like, you talk about this idea of structural repetitiveness. If I were to say, just, like, on the surface, like, which one is more so... Because with Toy Story 2, then it's cutting between... Okay, so then we're at the apartment. And then the toys have, like a lighter scene for the... With the shenanigans, which are obviously great scenes, like, with the crossing the road and Alice Toy Barn. So it'll be, like fun shenanigans scene... And then, like, back at Al's apartment, and then going back and forth. Whereas with Toy Story 3, there's so much going on that, like, it doesn't, in terms of then setting up this formula, then cutting back and forth, like, yes, then it has then all the toys together, and then there is a brief period in which, okay, then Woody's then going to Sunnyside, and then we're going back and forth between Woody and Buzz, and then we're going back and forth between Woody and the rest of the gang, and then Woody then comes back. So, like, it doesn't fall as much into a formula as I think... The other movies, I feel like that there's more going on.
I almost wish there were a little bit more of a formula, I feel. You know what I mean? I almost wish, not a formula like ape something, but like a formula like, maybe...
This is the movie, and this is, like, it's gonna, like, deal with this and address it the whole time. Is that what you're saying?
Maybe. I'm just kind of riffing off of what you said, whereas, like, Toy Story and Toy Story 2 had a very kind of specific structure, like, it's gotta do this, and then this, and then this, and this, and this. I like that about Toy Story 2.
I like it too.
Like,
of course
I love going back and forth. I totally do see what you're saying. That it's very much here, like, all right, here's the plot, and then here's some shenanigans. Yeah. Here's the plot, and here's some shenanigans.
Which the shenanigans are amazing, but yeah.
You know, there's a lot of variety of action and location, I think, with Toy Story 2. Sure. Whereas with this, it's very much like kind of the same thing happening.
Toy Story 2 does feel like a very big movie. We go to a lot of different places. Whereas Toy Story, and this is the thing, when you're making a prison movie, like, it has to then feel like somewhat constrained. Yeah. Even though they do a pretty good job at, like, then we're going to stay true to that and we're going to capture that feeling. It's not like a prison movie the whole way through. Of course. So it's just in the parts that then, in the section that it has to commit to that. And then the other parts, it'll take you to all these different places.
Yeah. I would have wished there had been more of a adventure, almost. I don't know what that adventure would be, you know.
I would like
not to say I wanted to see Circle 7's version where, like, they have to go to Taiwan, but, you know, I do see some potential merit in that.
Yeah. No, I would like to see a return to the adventure in Toy Story 4. I think that would make sense. But
I think that's the heart of it.
Yeah. No, I like that. Well, like, the first one isn't as much an adventure either. But, like, it's really the second one that I think sets up those expectations.
The first one feels more... That's also kind of a prison escape movie.
Sort of,
in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is still able to accomplish, like, those twists and turns I'm talking about, and also a lot of variety of what's going on. Whereas, basically, you have two basic areas: the Sunshine Room, or
Sunnyside, the Caterpillar room and the Butterfly Room.
And we're not really in the Butterfly Room that much. Right. I would say that whatever room they're in, whatever animal it is, and then, like, the hallway. So, and then, like, maybe the outside. Whereas with Sid's house, you have his room, you have the hallway, you have the kitchen, you have the backyard, and a lot of different things are happening in each of those locations. Yeah. And also, there's a lot developing about the characters. Whereas, like, not too much, like, no one's personal status quo is really changing too much. It's very plot driven. Toy Story 3. It on one hand, like I said, like, not enough is happening, but on the other hand, like, too much is happening.
But, like
it's trying to get through so much plot.
You say plot-driven, but, like, let's take a look at the quote-unquote plot point of...
The main plot of the story isn't super character-driven.
But let's take a look at the quote-unquote plot point of Mrs. Potato Head then has her eye, then sees through, realizes that Andy did care about that. You could look at that as a plot point, but it's a plot point in the sense that our characters are changing their impression of what their priorities are. I don't think it's real. It's, like, artificially plot driven. I think it's very much about how, like, okay, like, this is then what we feel, this is what we value, and they choose to go to the daycare. They choose to leave. They choose to, like, less so than the other films. I feel like then they're pushing.
And I agree.
So I think it's more character oriented.
No, but I see that. But that was one specific moment. I would say that's, like, the one. Basically, they want they're fine staying. They just like don't want to be in this room anymore, and then they find that out, and then nothing really changes with
no,
them.
but them like leaving Andy's and then deciding to go to the daycare in the first place, and then
I'm talking about once they're in the daycare.
Yeah, but then they don't want to then stay in the.
But that's not a major
right.
character.
No, I would say that the major one would be them realizing to go back to Andy.
The thing you brought up is one example.
Sure, but like I don't think there's like tons more in the other films. In
Toy Story 2 we have his I'm trying to find the words to describe it. 'Cause I know what I'm thinking of. I'm just trying to think like how to phrase it. In Toy Story 2 we have his realization that he's like this famous star. And this is also just in Al's room. I'm not even gonna get to other characters.
Yeah. Just focus on the apartment.
We have that, and then you have the bit where his arm rips, and then more tension develops between him and Jesse.
Okay, yeah.
And then you have it gets fixed, and he wants to leave, and then he finds out Jesse's story, which is a major thing.
Right.
And then he decides to stay after hearing Stinky Pete's. I was like almost forgetting his name. Stinky Pete's speech. Yeah. So he decides to go to Japan, and then it doesn't really change for a while until the toys come to save him. And then I would say, even though he still wants to go to Japan, like the fact he has to now confront Buzz and the gang about it, and like kind of reaffirm that.
That's a great scene.
I would say another one of another point, another pivot, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then he watches the "You Got a Friend in Me," and I can keep going. Right. Within this one scene, there's like 4.
I think that the parallel to that confrontation in this one is then the scene in which Woody confronts Lotso, and it's ideology versus ideology.
But that's way near the end.
That's way near the end.
I'm talking. That's why I'm saying that there's one plot point.
Right.
Is basically from when they.
But that's just the other toy side. You're neglecting you're trying to compare the Woody plot from Toy Story 2 to the toys plot in Toy Story 3.
Well, what I'm trying to say is
Woody to Woody. You got to go Woody to Woody.
But what I'm trying to say though is no, because I think I can make that comparison because that's kind of the main driving force of the story.
I disagree. I think Woody is the...
No, he's the main character, but like the whole film, you said it's a prison film.
The whole thing isn't a prison film, just like an aspect.
But that's the main action of the film.
Yeah, but like
that's the main action.
The main
of what's going on. That's the whole objective. The objective of all the characters is to escape the Sunnyside. Therefore, Sunnyside is the major point.
But the main propulsion beyond that is Woody's relationship to Andy. Like above all of that, the prison escape.
No, my point being that not much happens at Sunnyside. Sunnyside is our main playing space. The way Al's room was our main playing space. The way Sid's house is kind of the main playing space.
Like that I can see.
And if you really want to talk about Woody, I'm talking about just pure kind of like plot developments. The stuff with Woody, he's only not at Sunnyside for a small part of the movie. He escapes, goes to Bonnie's, finds out about it, and immediately comes back with much ease. He it's hard for him, but he easily escapes and he easily comes back. Not much happens in the way of character or plot development other than learning about Lotso being evil.
But if I were to go character progression of Woody throughout the movie, it's first just trying to then reassure the toys about then what the future's going to be.
I'm talking about then we get a sense of you're drawing on things that are before and after what I'm talking.
But it's but like you said, Woody's not at Sunnyside that long, so it's sort of an unfair comparison.
I'm talking about he's not at Bonnie's that long. I said.
Yeah, but
he's not at Bonnie's that long.
Right, but so then he's not at either that long. So we have to then sort of assess it differently. We have to if Woody is pretty much at Al's apartment the whole movie, then we have to then go his arc in that movie to his arc in this movie.
No, but I'm not talking about Woody's arc specifically. I'm talking. Okay. This is going we're forgetting the root of what the point I'm trying to make is that the plot points of Sunnyside feel a little extended. And the reason being is that not much happens in the way of these pivots that I'm talking about. For example, in Toy Story 2, there's a lot of pivots like that in this location, and that's why this section of the film feels a little extended longer than it needs to be.
Okay,
that's my point.
Right.
And nothing to do with Woody's arc. Is nothing to do about that specifically. This section of the film, when we're dealing with the stuff at Sunnyside, it feels like just things are happening. but not like changing. Things are happening, but not developing.
Because like I think that's kind of then what has to happen, because in order for it to be like they're trapped in this prison,
but then you bring yourself into a corner. Is what I'm saying, is that it could be stronger. You're right. If it's written this way, then it needs to be this way.
No, but it makes sense why. But Peter, this is the whole thing. The movie as a whole is dealing with this notion of purgatory, and you're being caught in between, like in the in between space. Whether it's the attic,
they say purgatory
or the
feels like terrible. And just like it feels like long and belabored is the idea of purgatory. So is that so the film is meant to feel belabored?
That's not what I'm saying. I mean, just in the sense that you're in this sort of like in between state, whether it's the daycare or it's this idea of then going to the attic. So like while you're then and that's reflecting on this whole idea that they feel then trapped by their situation of that they're beholden to Andy, and then nothing is then able to then happen for them. So this section of the film then, in order then like do justice to that, needs to then be more about, okay, this is what's going on and this is what's being like sort of then thrown at us. We need to then recontextualize it and decide where our values lie, what we want going forward, what is our relationship to Andy, do we want to leave, what's going on with Woody, and that's then sort of like, so I think it makes sense. It's not that then it could be better.
So you're conceding that there aren't as many pivots, but it's okay, it's supposed to be designed that way.
Because I think the focus should be more about.
This is kind of like isn't what I'm talking about. Like,
yeah.
This is like a different discussion. Mm-hmm. So my question is not my question. I stand firm on this point that not enough happens.
Right.
Like in like beyond like surface level things are happening.
Yeah.
But there's not enough under the surface.
I think it has to be like, this is the status quo for us now, and it sucks. And then like, what are we gonna do about it? Is the real thread. In the same way that like. This is the whole movie. When it starts, we're then at Andy's. We've been at Andy's for years now, and he's not playing with us. This is the new status quo. It sucks. What are we going to do about it?
So it justifies things not happening? Like, you're explaining...
But it doesn't... No.
You're trying to justify other things.
Because it's not nothing happening. It's not... But, like, the characters are evolving, and the characters are changing what they want to do. So there is stuff happening. But
those aren't, like, when we talk about, like, when we took... like our acting performance strategies class. You talked about like the spine of the character. You're talking about like what they want to do. You're talking about very surface level objective, like we want to escape. But like Ham, what is Ham change? Like there's not enough under the surface changing is what I'm saying.
The toys need to then operate
once they find out that Andy doesn't want them. I concede that one part.
Yeah.
But other than that, nothing of that level.
Finding out Andy doesn't want them, going to the daycare, coming to realize
but I'm saying
we want to then stay at the daycare.
But I'm saying just at the you keep bringing up.
Okay. So then just at the daycare then.
Brian's face is getting very red now because I'm challenging the greatest film ever made that's supposedly perfect.
So just at the daycare then. They're there. They're convinced this is then the place to stay. Then they try to convince Woody to stay with them. Then they express. Then Woody then sort of made the wrong decision. Then they're played with by the kids, and then it's like, okay, we're not then happy with this. We need to then do something. Then Buzz then confronts Lotso, and then Lotso gives him the opportunity to then join then sort of like his gang and like sort of go on to the butterfly room. Yeah. And because he can't then take his friends, Buzz doesn't take the offer. And then the toys realize that then Andy was then like trying to throw them.
I just don't feel like the characters are being like challenged. It's a big issue when like one of your major characters has basically now become a different character. I think
there is some truth.
I think it was a mistake to have Buzz. You know, it was an interesting concept, but I think it was a mistake to basically like have him out of play for like as truly Buzz. Mm-hmm. I think it was a mistake to basically have him out of commission for like 25 minutes of the film.
I can understand that. I can definitely
because I think if he were there, we could see this like, because it's not so much that characters are changing, like this information is being presented, like, oh, Andy actually did want us, whatever. I think what I'm really getting at is more ideas being raised and then challenged.
Yeah.
It's not so much coming either way. I think the perfect conduit would have been Buzz. But now he's basically been taken out. Once the opportunity for development happens, once like Lotso is revealed to be a villain, and they have to reevaluate this whole thing, that is also the moment where Buzz essentially is taken out of the movie as Buzz.
Yeah.
And we don't get him back until the dump. And then by then it's really just like a series of like bad thing.
But I think that
Buzz gets shafted in this film.
Yeah, I understand that. I think he's like Toy Story 2 is his best film, but I think that allows Jessie to sort of then take the leadership position in a way that she wouldn't have been able to if then Buzz was then still in commission. Because sort of then what it becomes is then Woody's on this side of then sticking with Andy. Jessie's really then all for then let's then try to do something else. Because what you have to then also understand that's like another thing that they had to accomplish in this movie was we haven't spent a movie before with Jessie with all of the other characters in Andy's room. So that could really feel artificial in the sense that we don't really understand then what her relationship is to the rest of them. Do they really then feel in place? So we haven't like established that sort of familiar feeling for then them to then really then come across then like to emphasize the change this time around. So then in order to like keep her from fading into the background, she then has to then be an instigator and she has to be on the side of we need to then take charge and do something else. Buzz is then sort of then in the middle on that, even before he then gets switched off. So again, it sort of then makes sense that then the movie then just sort of like lets him then be taken out of commission because he is just sort of then like.
But why does Jessie need to assume the role of leader? Like there's nothing about watching it like I need to see Jessie assume.
Well, because
leadership.
I think it does right by how much focus then her character got in the second one, and I think she's a more fitting character to purport this idea of like,
but she
okay,
seems
then we need to then
naturally
take charge of our
if that's
destiny.
something that something that they're it's trying to do is show like her assuming this leadership, like she seems like a natural leader. Like there's no like maybe I would have liked to see like her like maybe I would have liked to see her maybe like if that's supposed to be like what's going on, you know, explore that more. Right. And her like maybe not being afraid to take leadership. Like it's always been Woody and Buzz. And now Woody's out of the picture, and Buzz is like brainwashed. Now I need to like that should have been more explored.
That's interesting, but like when I say like the leadership, I think what really like makes it relevant to like what's going on in the movie is less about like then Jessie's then sort
she
of
already
then, like,
starts
thinking
the
about
film.
leadership. It's more about okay, we're then going to really then build off the fact that what happened to her with Emily, this like she even says it's Emily all over again. So we're taking advantage of that. She's been abandoned before. So she's really then trying to then assert this idea of like, I've seen this happen. Woody, wake up. It's over. Andy's all grown up. Yeah. That's the focus with her character.
She kind of seems like already like it's not like the two leaders are out of commission now. She has to assume something. She seems. I mean, maybe it's just my read of the film, but at the beginning she seems like she's one of three. Like she's one of like the three.
I know.
So this idea of her assuming leadership that doesn't really work for me.
No, I don't like. I'm not saying like assuming leadership in the sense that like she's like taking over the toys. I just mean in terms of like her ideology bubbling to the surface and becoming the prominent one by which the rest of them the toys are following.
But how does that manifest later on in the film? Not just her saying it's Emily all over again. That's one. How does it manifest?
She's the one who says, "I know what to do," and they decide.
I'm talking about a specific moment in the film.
Literally when she says, "Yeehaw, fellas, I know what to do," looks at the sunny side box, and then Buzz is like, is this what we should do? Like, what about Woody?
No, I mean later. I'm going back to Sunnyside. When at Sunnyside does that like her ideology? What is her ideology?
Well, you asked me for a moment, and I gave you a moment, but now you want a Sunnyside moment.
Well, that's what I meant when I said like a moment. I'm still hung up on what happens in Sunnyside.
When she is then confronting.
What is her ideology?
What
is her ideology?
Can I say a word? Her ideology is that Andy's grown up. That's it. It's time for us to embrace this change and trying to then hold on to the past. Like it's not like that it's not going to work anymore. And there's obviously then some truth to that. Woody and Jessie are on two sides of the extremes that both go too far. Woody is then trying to then really then stay so true to then the previous relationship that he's not then willing to like let himself have a life beyond that. And Jessie is so ready to sort of like accept this idea of then this is going to be a place with no owners means no heartbreak in the daycare. Which let's then talk a little bit about that.
But didn't she reverse that immediately when she realized that Andy actually did want them?
Well, once she realizes that, yeah, but like she doesn't have any reason to not, unless she was to be stubborn.
But isn't it just like? But wouldn't she be like, it's time to move on anyway? Like just because he wanted us in the attic doesn't mean like we should still move on anyway.
Well,
emotionally.
Well, because she's still like at that point, like yeah, but like she's still not like entirely correct in her assessment then.
Wouldn't she really be like super gung ho staying with Andy because of her abandonment issues with Emily? Wouldn't she be more on Woody's side? She wouldn't be like, we need to abandon Andy. Like, wouldn't she be because of her abandonment issues?
But she stayed by him so long. But the fact that then she thinks that then she's been thrown out, I totally understand then why that set her off. And when she realizes that that wasn't the case, then she's willing to return to him. I think it totally makes sense.
But because she was thrown out, then she would like basically be like, well, fuck you, Andy.
Well, I mean, like
because she was thrown out by Emily, but then Woody in Toy Story 2 asked her, wouldn't you give
she wasn't
anything
thrown
to have
out
a day?
by Emily. There's a big difference between being like
so
put out in a
because
donation box and being thrown away.
So but like, and I really don't care about this issue, but now that you've brought it up, I'm curious now.
Okay.
Like, she said in Toy Story 2, like she wasn't thrown out, but she was given away.
Yeah.
And Woody said, wouldn't you just want... So that still feels like a betrayal, right?
But Emily?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
But Woody asked, wouldn't you give anything to just have one more day with Emily? To imply that she did that wouldn't stop her, like if Emily were to come back. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. So wouldn't that there still be like a longing to go back to Emily, even though she was betrayed by Emily? So even though getting thrown out, wouldn't she still be like, because she has basically like Stockholm syndrome, like abandonment issues? Like,
I think there's a sort of toxicity to that, but I think she's more like, to put it bluntly, as you said, that like the Stockholm syndrome, like, yeah. But I think at this point, given the fact that she's been through it twice, she's really become more seasoned to the idea, and that's why then she's really then able to take charge and really be the one affirming the viewpoint straight to Woody and arguing with him. Because she's become used to this cycle and she understands, and when an opportunity is presented to her to like seemingly break through it, then she's going to take advantage of that. And I think let's then let that bring us into then this sort of then discussion of what the daycare purports to be. This idea of then like when the kids get old, new ones replace them, and like what we were then saying about how like it's not like then a genuine relationship. You had a really good thing you said about the impermanence of relationships.
Oh yeah, I was talking about how like he has a great line which says no owners means no heartbreak. And this idea that you see a lot like with real people, this idea of like if I emotionally detach myself from like strong relationships, I'll never get hurt. Yeah. But then on the flip side, that you'll never feel true happiness or joy.
Exactly.
So this idea of like it's supposed to hurt. That's how you know it meant something.
Exactly, which is so interesting. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So like because in many ways it seems like it purports to be like a toy utopia, and even Woody concedes like, look, it seems nice here, I'll admit, because like it is then it's supposedly then presenting a solution to all their problems.
And it kind of and you know what? It's I think your reading of your movie sucks analysis, his superficial analysis is a tad superficial. That thing I just said, this idea of like basically trying to find some other means of being detached from an owner to achieve toy happiness, as opposed to like sticking with something even though it's gonna hurt. That's the same idea in Toy Story 2.
Well, but like
it's the same idea, unarguably the same. It's the same concept. It's slightly different. It has to be contextually slightly different, but I don't think.
But that's not the ultimate drive of Toy Story 3. Ultimately, it's not about, well, we have to go back to Andy, even though it's like...
But it's this idea of, like, we can go back, or... But then I think that makes it kind of weak. Because then what's the alternative? Then there should be, like, some strong... Like basically they want to get back to Andy because otherwise, like, it means pain or death. I want
The alternative is Bonnie. That's the alternative.
No, but they don't know that until the very end.
Right, so that's when the movie ends.
No.
It resolves everything.
Please.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm saying, Brian looks like he's grabbing the knife. He's getting ready. How dare I tell the perfect movie? No, the idea of forget about Bonnie. They don't know about Bonnie. So basically, the reason why they want to get back to Andy is because, what's the alternative to Andy? Death.
Yeah.
Right? In Toy Story 2, the alternative to Andy is like a potentially better alternative. Mm-hmm. There's more ideological conflict there. Mm-hmm. In this film, there's really no ideological conflict that the characters have to face within themselves. Mm-hmm. There's an ideological... Well, not even. It's more just like, Lotso, you're an asshole. Like, your idea of a utopia just benefits you. That's not really ideological conflict. That's more... What's their alternative? Death. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Toy Story 2... there's this strong the reason why Stinky Pete as a revealed villain works. Not to say Lotso doesn't, but the reason why the Stinky Pete villain reveal works. I'm usually not a fan of like the villain revealed plot, but in that it works is because for most of the movie the interior conflict is so strong that you almost don't need a literal antagonist. Right. And then once Woody resolves that conflict, then now you need an externalization of that conflict to be like, no, I'm not going away so easily. So what I'm saying is, I don't know how I got on that point, but that's a really interesting point. But my point being that Lotso and Stinky Pete serve similar functions. That screw owners, you know, for Lotso, and again, you're gonna make the argument, oh well, Lotso had an owner and he was betrayed by, or Stinky Pete never had an owner. Those are different.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
I know what you're going to say, and I'm going to immediately rebuttal that. Because I know
Pete so desperately wanted to have an owner, and he never has had the experience. Whereas Lotso knows the idea intimately. I know.
So they have to be, but they have to be different because they're different movies. But at the core, they're both dealing with this idea of rejecting true relationship because of a fear of the negative sides of that, and that's inarguable. That's present in both antagonists. That's kind of the core of both of their messages. Go with our version of Toy Utopia, regardless of what that may be, depending on which character. Go subscribe to our idea of Toy Utopia because the traditional route of like being with a kid or whatever is just too painful. And that's present in both films.
Yeah.
Your movie sucks probably does not say that. But to say that, no, there's barely any similarities between Toy Story 3.
Of course there's not barely any similarities. As I said,
but your supposition was that the suggestion that there's a strong similarity between the two is both preposterous and idiotic. Well, I don't think it's as ridiculous of a claim.
No, I don't think it's preposterous by any means. Because obviously there is a carrying over of the themes.
If anything,
but it's not rehashing the idea. It's not another story in which we realize instead of then this other thing that seems good, what really then we need to do is then go back to Andy. But then it ends up then coming to a completely different conclusion.
And that's where you end up running yourself into a corner because you can't rehash it. Because then you're rehashing it.
Yeah.
But then what you do instead isn't as interesting because it's more interesting to have an ideological conflict, but the alternative is just death. So obviously you're going to want to go with this.
There is still an ideological conflict in Toy Story 3.
So what's the two? No, but I'm talking about within the characters themselves.
Okay. Yeah.
What's Woody's what's the ideological conflict once they find out Andy wants them?
As we said, it's all the more existential as the films go on. But what the conflict ends up being, and it's really then sort of externalized in that confrontation between Woody and Lotso. And this whole idea of Lotso purporting, ain't no kid ever loved a toy really. Chew on that while you're at the dump. And Woody sort of then coming to, while sort of then talking to Lotso about, what about Daisy and used to do everything with her, and even though, that relationship is over, it was real, in the process realizing that my relationship with Andy, my connection with Andy, is real. So even if I'm not then going to still be with him, literally, it's not to say that it didn't happen. It's not to say that it wasn't a genuine connection. So in order to then come to that, but by coming to that realization, that's what then lets Woody realize it's okay to move on from Andy. So then the whole conflict is then this whole idea of what is a toy, and lots of his great then speech about we're all just trash waiting to be thrown away. So all a toy is, getting across this idea of this is what a toy is. They're totally then replaceable. We've of course then had this strand throughout the movie since the first one of being replaced. Lotso was literally replaced by another Lotso. So if they are then so replaceable and so disposable and then does a toy then really then have any purpose if then the kid is then going to go on to have another important relationship with someone? So it's almost as if then we're going from one friend to another later in life, or then like my like close relationship with a parent, and then going on to then have a relationship with like a significant other. It's like, so then did they abandon me? Is it that I then never had an actual connection with them and I was put aside? No, I'm still there for them. And this is then really then this point is hit home in the beginning of the movie, which recalls what sort of Woody then sort of purported in the staff meeting of the first film. And what he said in the staff meeting of the first movie is, like any leader, he gives out these sort of ideals, but he still has yet to like really like actually learn them and take them to heart. And what he says is, listen, no one's getting replaced. This is Andy we're talking about. And of course then he has to then deal with being replaced in the first one. And then he goes on to say, it doesn't matter how much we're played with. And that's then the conflict of Toy Story 2, in the sense that he's then put on the shelf and he feels like he's not going to be played with anymore. And then he goes on to say, what matters is that we're here for Andy when he needs us. And in Toy Story 3, when then they do another staff meeting, Woody says, this job isn't about getting played with, it's about, and then Jesse reiterates, being there for Andy, we know. He's forgotten that part of it was being there when he needs us. It's just then being there, I have to then physically then be there. So then realizing this idea of like, yes, like in the past, it was a certain way, but I don't have to then be beholden to that. It existed, it happened, I was there for him when he needed me, and I can go on to live another life beyond that. That's the internal struggle. That's sort of the existential themes that it's dealing with. And it's so interesting. And it really then, speaks to this idea of change. And I think a deeper way, and an appropriately deeper way than we ever had before. And I think that takes us to new heights.
Yeah. That's extremely interesting.
Yeah.
Doesn't answer my question at all, but...
What was your question?
The specific ideological conflict... Because the thing you mentioned was being there for Andy literally or being there for Andy figuratively aren't really opposites.
But that
they're like very close together.
The core ideological conflict between that is being the relationship between toys and owners. Is it real or is it not? That's the conflict.
But where does Woody ever doubt that?
Where does Woody ever doubt that? When
Lotso is able to reach the button and all the other toys that are about to fall in, they're going, just push it. Lotso gives the line. Where's your kid now, Sheriff? And that's directly getting at this idea of, like, days gone by, the owner being out of the picture, and the relationship ringing false.
That seems like an interesting read on the film, like, that someone would say, like, this isn't a definitive interpretation, it's just like a lens through which you look at the film.
But he doubts that in the sense that he feels like he still needs to then stay with Andy and accompany him to college in order to fulfill his obligation. Because he then gets the sense of, like, then it's like this chip on his shoulder of, like, I need to then continue being.
No, I get that. I would have liked to have seen that come up more, because at a certain point it's more just getting back to Andy. Whether or not we go to Bonnie's or go to college or go in there, like, it's just about getting to Andy. I wish that had been actually prevalent throughout the film, about him actually, like, talking about going to college. Like I wish that had actually been part of it.
That would be nice to then spend more time, but like the time spent at Bonnie's is to then show that there is like this good alternative, but he's then going to keep on putting it aside. He's going to keep on putting aside everything else for this idea of, I have to then be there for Andy. I have to then be there for him. Yeah. So that's then sort of where I'm coming at it from. Which is why I like, why I love, like, the core of why I love.
Is there anything you don't like about this movie? Is there anything you don't like? Because my favorite movie, I can still point out flaws with it.
What I would say is, like,
does anything I'm saying make any sense?
Of course it makes sense. Of course it makes sense. I agree with you that there is a tragedy to the fact that then Buzz doesn't then get to have then as much to do. I would like
kind of like Han Solo in the third Star Wars film.
Well, not that extreme. Yeah. But like he's sort of at the same place that he was in Toy Story 2, in the sense that he's learned from Woody. He's really taken everything Woody said to heart. The pupil surpassing the teacher in a lot of ways. So he's sort of then still at that place. Like, I would have loved to have him reflect a little bit more. Like, there's the moment in which, like, we're reflecting upon, in the first one, then Andy is then looking between Woody and Buzz as he, like, pulls them out of the toy box. We sort of then have a similar moment here in Toy Story 3, when he's picking, then which one am I then taking? And then puts Buzz in the trash bag. There is that moment of Buzz's, like, genuine shock. We don't, like, I wish there was a scene of Buzz being, like...
I wouldn't think it would be petty.
I did say, like, it might then come across as petty, but, like, it would really have to be done right. But, like, this idea of, like, how the mighty have fallen. Like, my God, I used to then be his favorite, and look at where
those
I am
ideas
now.
are more interesting.
Because that could sort of
me,
then push along this idea all the more of like how our relationship has changed. Like maybe then we're not like
that idea is more interesting to me than I think the ideas that the film actually spends its time dealing with. Like that would have been really interesting.
That would have been really.
It's really character. Yeah. Like really character based, and you could have got a lot of interesting drama.
Yeah. Which like I would love, like if there was like a 3-hour epic version of this movie, then like of course, but like at the end of the day, then they have to focus on Woody and his arc and his journey. So like I get it, I understand then why they did that. But yeah, like I guess another thing, like one thing that like I have sort of picked up upon like repeated viewings, because trust me, I've watched this movie a lot. It is sort of interesting how when we pick up with the aliens in Toy Story 2, they won't shut up. But in this movie, they're quiet for long stretches of time. They don't really even like say anything new the whole movie until the credits from this little Romeo, oh Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Like literally, like they're like,
honestly, I forget they're there. They're part of the main crew, like the escape crew, right?
They're there through the whole movie, and even when Ken is going through the roll call of then like asked for the aliens' presence, they just squeak. The aliens won't shut up. I guess like after all that time, like of Mr. Potato being like, "Shut up, leave me alone," then they're finally like to like such an extreme, will never speak ever. So like I guess that's then something that happened. But of course, then it's made okay by the fact that they play such a role within the Claw, and I feel like then that's almost then sort of like a sleight of hand that the movie does, in the sense that it's like we're going to make you forget about them, and then they're going to then and paying their debt back to Mr. Potato Head for saving them. Yeah, so. I understand then why they did that. But yeah, so like I guess those are then sort of the two things that come to mind. Yeah. And like I mean like I think then Toy Story 2 then like it has that like with all the sequences of like crossing the road and all these great acts, like it's able to then have more of those, whereas then Toy Story 3 like can't, like just sort of by design, which
it does feel a little. I know you disagree. It feels a little. I talk about not enough happening, but then at the same token like too much is going on. It feels like it is trying to like juggle too much, and not that it's not successful, but it feels a little like.
It's a very busy movie.
It's very busy. Sometimes I would like to have like rested on certain things longer.
And that totally makes sense. Yeah. So like I think that's then where I would come at it in that respect. But yeah, no, I love what they did with Lotso. I think he's the perfect villain. Like I sort of then already then got into all of that when talking about how he like reflects on Woody. One other thing I'll bring, like Blake Clark as Slink, then replacing the late Jim Varney. Does such a great job. Was friends with Jim Varney in real life. I guess that attests to then how well he did with
I need to reiterate, it's not, when I say he does an amazing job, I don't mean like he was able to, really capture the essence. No, I literally mean like I can't tell them apart. Yeah. Like if I didn't know we were watching this, like this is Toy Story 3 and this is like a different voice actor, like I just heard a voice. It sounds exactly the same.
It's such a respectful performance, and I'm really glad.
It goes even beyond. It goes even beyond talent.
Yeah.
It's just like there must be something scientifically. Their voices are able to contort and sound the same. Yeah. Like it goes beyond talent at a certain point. It's like eerie how similar it sounds.
I think maybe they even at certain points with like some of like the screams like near the end, like they'll use like stuff from like Jim Varney or whatever. But like I'm so glad that they still kept
Mr. Potato Head dead
around. Don Rickles unfortunately passed away. Yeah.
Did he finish recording stuff for Toy Story 4?
His agent, manager, whatever, said that he hadn't recorded for Toy Story 4. So I really wonder what they're gonna. I really wonder what they're gonna do, because Don Rickles has a very distinctive voice. But I guess Jim Varney did as well. But like the main thing that's sad is like, I don't know if then he'll just be in the background and he won't talk. Like Estelle Harris like loves doing Mrs. Potato Head, so it would be a shame if then like they had to write both of them out, because it'd be weird to just have Mrs. Potato Head. So like I don't know what they're gonna do.
Maybe they'll CGI him in.
Ha 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 ha.
Should we get to rankings?
Let me see if then there's anything else I wanted to address.
Because we're coming up on an hour and a half here.
We are? Oh. I guess we did have a lot to talk about. I remember we were saying, like, because we both really like this one, like, it's not going to go on. But I guess there's just so much to love.
Well, because, so much to
quibble about. Yeah.
So much to quibble about.
Yeah. I get, like, yeah, no, I think we pretty much then touched on everything.
I think we talked more about things we disagreed on.
Yeah.
But that's more interesting, I think, because, like, anything else we would say, like your 20 minutes basically covered most of what everyone else always says.
Yeah.
Like, I think we actually got to some, like, stuff that people hadn't talked about before.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's anything really more to...
Right.
Like, we already raved about everything great in the first half hour. You know, so I don't know what else to...
The guys from the Christmas decoration box joke is very
my God.
Very underrated. It's so funny.
It's really funny. That's very, very funny.
Yeah. Okay. So then rankings, I guess?
Who should go first?
Well,
this is a very easy pick for me. And yours is also a very easy pick, so I don't think it's going to take...
Yeah, like, I guess I should do mine first because mine's not, like, a surprise at all because I already said, like how I feel.
Yeah.
So... From bottom to top.
11 movies.
11 movies. Wow. A Bug's Life, Cars, Monsters, Inc., Ratatouille, WALL-E, Up, Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Toy Story, Toy Story 2, Toy Story 3. I love Toy Story 3 so much. I think each Toy Story film is allowed to be better because of the groundwork laid by its predecessors. And it continues to increase in quality, fittingly so. It is a perfect trilogy. It is the perfect series of films. The best movies ever made, bar none. What say you?
Kurosawa films.
Kurosawa?
Or like Pinocchio, or like any other film.
Pinocchio.
Okay, let me see my list.
All right, let me find it. Okay, Peter's rankings.
Peter's bullshit. Okay.
Yeah, So.
I think I know where this is going.
To the dump.
Yeah. Well,
in the garbage truck.
Where do you think it goes?
In the garbage truck on the way to the dump.
Where do you think I'm putting this?
Did you put it in yet?
Yes.
Oh, you did? Okay. Well, let me... Can you say what your list was before?
Yes.
Toy Story? Okay, so say that.
My list before.
Yes.
Bug's Life, Cars, Up, WALL-E, Toy Story, Finding Nemo, Toy Story 2, Monsters, Inc., Ratatouille, The Incredibles.
I think you're going to end up putting it just below Toy Story 2.
Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
Bug's Life.
Okay.
Cars. Mm-hmm. Up. WALL-E. Toy Story. 3.
Oh, what?
Toy Story.
Oh.
Finding Nemo. Toy Story 2. Monsters, Inc., Ratatouille. And then the one and only Incredibles. Up at number 1.
Oh, God. So... Up until this point, you talk about how, like, the third one is, like, probably the second best, but you put it below 1 and 2.
Yeah, because when we were talking, I kind of convinced myself of a lot of issues
Falsities?
I think the film's held. No, the issues I think the film has, and I still think the movie's really good, but the original Toy Story, the reason why it's so low on my Pixar list in general is that, like, for me, that's a perfect movie. Mm-hmm. The only reason why it's so low is just like the highs of other movies might be higher. Uh-huh. You know, like a movie can be perfect, but not like necessarily be at the top of a list necessarily.
Right.
And for me, Toy Story feels so fresh and has such a unique style to it. Uh-huh. Whereas Toy Story 3, albeit a perfect send off for this trilogy, mm-hmm. and then after this ranking, we should talk about Toy Story 4.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
We completely forgot about that. Yeah. But I think once we get Toy Story 3 out of the way, then we can talk about it.
Okay.
But, you know, as great as it is and perfect send-off for the characters, there is an element of, let's say, that repetitiveness for me. Okay. The story isn't as strong. It can be strong, but for me, it's not as strong or as engaging.
But like, interestingly, like you had said earlier about how, like, the first one is, like, fairly straightforward and this is a lot more existential.
So, yeah, like, and I maybe it's because I've seen this so many times, and maybe it's because maybe I'm tired, and maybe because like your
gussing,
like crusader-like love for this movie like was putting me off, but like something about it like wasn't as captivating.
So saying all these good things about it, it makes
no, just during the movie you going like, oh, that's such a good shot. Oh, this is a look of the lighting of that scene. Oh.
But it's also good. I can't help myself.
I think there was an element of the like the great thematic elements that often pushed it over the original Toy Story weren't as compelling for me this time. I don't know if it's because I've seen it so many times where it's like not as compelling anymore, or my tastes have developed to be a little more like in line with something like Toy Story 2, where it's more dealing with it in abstract and it feels a little more adult and mature. Mm-hmm. In terms of its approach, not so much like this is much more dark, But I feel like Toy Story 2's approach to these ideas, they're both dealing with the same idea, just in different ways. And that's why I think maybe that's more of a duology.
Yes.
But for me, I think my tastes are starting to gravitate more, as I learn more about film, are starting to gravitate more towards that, what I would consider a little more mature, a little more sophisticated approach. So I think that's why Toy Story 2 beats it out. But then the original Toy Story, I think, is just so fresh and funny and compelling and wholly original. Like, not a single moment is wasted in that film for me. Whereas, like I said, this film, parts of it feel a little too stretched out. Not enough maybe happens here. Like, Buzz is underutilized. I think that's what pushes it just over.
Okay.
So that's my list.
All right. I can respect that opinion, but you'll regret it.
Why? Because you'll kill me?
I'm not going to say.
We should briefly...
Let's talk about Toy Story 4
talk about Toy Story 4.
Which, like, despite the fact that you feel Toy Story 3 is the worst Toy Story movie ever, you feel it should be the last one.
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's not worried. That makes it sound like I don't like Toy Story 3.
Yeah.
It goes like this. It's like... You can't see this graph I'm about to draw, audience.
With your hands.
But it's kind of like, it's just like a little like arc. So you have like Toy Story, and then Toy Story 2 is better, and then Toy Story 3 is just a little bit below Toy Story. But like, well, I mean, you like Return of the Jedi, but out of the 3 films, like Return of the Jedi is the worst of those 3.
Oh, well, yeah.
But that seems to be a perfectly fine end of the trilogy, right? For you, right?
Perfectly fine, but like.
But you seem to really like it. I don't really like Return of the Jedi. But you've always said like, I really like Return of the Jedi. It's just not as good as the other 2. And
I still really like it, but like I can recognize now, like given how old I am, how like it is like sort of then like of a different caliber than the other 2 in a lot of ways. Okay. Even though I do really like I love the Jabba's palace stuff. I know you say how that goes on and on. I think that's just such a great sequence. But like the stuff on Endor then is what kind of then doesn't really then do it for me.
Yeah, but like I said, despite putting it below the original Toy Story, the trilogy game isn't,
to keep topping yourself.
Yeah, like the finale of a TV show doesn't have to be the best episode of a TV show, right?
It doesn't have to.
So why does 3 have to be the best one?
I feel like it just.
In the sense, not necessarily why you do think it is, but like your question seems to be like, why would you be satisfied? Why would you be satisfied with it if it's not the best? If it's the worst one? Because I think it's a great send off and kind of wraps up the trilogy's ideas, and not even the trilogy ideas, but the relationship between Woody and Andy. But I think even more so in a macro sense, the relationship between a boy and his toys.
Yeah.
I think that wraps it up so perfectly that to reopen this almost like a murder case, to reopen the case,
like a murder case. Okay.
To revisit it, like there's a beauty in finality. There's a reason why things end. Like Breaking Bad is an amazing show. It didn't need to end where it did in the sense of like they could have kept making more seasons. Like it didn't get canceled. They chose to end it. For why? Because the finality. Ending, context, beginning and end, like bookmarks, contextualize the entire narrative, A, and B, give it a sense of direction after the fact. Right.
I absolutely agree with you.
And for me, Toy Story 3 is a perfect way, despite my issues with it, what it is able to accomplish for the trilogy in a macro sense is perfect. It does exactly what it needs to do, I think. In a macro sense.
Yeah.
Within the film itself, I have those issues, but in the macro sense. So the idea of revisiting it, and not only revisiting it, but for a seemingly trivial enough concept,
Right.
And not even so much trivial, I can get behind it, but like I will say, the quality, I think this is the worst, technically I guess the worst of the Toy Stories, but the thematics of it, the stakes keep getting raised.
Yes.
Whereas this kind of feels like the idea for Toy Story 4 feels like an extended Toy Story tune or whatever they call them. It feels like an hour and a half version of that. It's just like another adventure that they can have now. But how is it for a trilogy that so masterfully keeps topping itself in terms of its stakes?
Right.
how is this the next logical step? The answer is money, but I'd like to hear you try to talk about it.
Okay. So
I know your allegiance is so dogmatic that you can somehow find a way to say that Toy Story 4 is not only acceptable but necessary.
Well, when they were making Toy Story 2, it could have very then much been, well, the first one was so good, and then this is going to be, and then it ended up being great. And then all the years leading up to Toy Story 3, Toy Story 2 is so perfect, how dare you then make a third one, it's not going to be good. And then it was great. So at this point, I'm then pretty much sold on the idea of like, well, if they're going to do another one, it's going to be really good. So, and I will admit, like Lee Unkrich himself, like after then the third one had come out, I was like, it's perfect, you could end it here, there doesn't have to be any more movies. I'd love to see Toy Story tunes and the TV specials and such, but like, doesn't need to be any more. If they say then there needs to be another one, then it makes sense. Since you brought up the Breaking Bad, what of Better Call Saul? Is that okay for it to exist?
Yeah. Because
Why?
I don't know, it doesn't take place before Breaking Bad? For starters,
it's supposed to, and it hasn't necessarily done all of these things yet. It's supposed to take place before, during, and after.
Well, because through and through, it's a spin-off. It's not dealing with like Walter White's not the main character. That's why.
Yeah.
That's why it's fine.
But boiling that down to like a simpler principle, it's because it's about something else. It's because it's a different thing that has its own identity, right? Like humor me here. So, like, since it has its own identity, it's okay for that to branch off.
But it doesn't have its. But Toy Story 4 doesn't have its own identity.
But you can't say that because it hasn't been made.
But I mean, if the because I know enough about it, and that it's the fourth installment of the story. Better Call Saul is not Breaking Bad season 6.
I know,
That's
like not
difference.
Literally speaking, yeah, of course.
No, but I think that's the difference. Better Call Saul season 1 is not Breaking Bad season 6. It does not continue that story. Toy Story 4 continues that story. And even more so than Breaking Bad. That was just an example.
Right.
Because that's a show that wasn't canceled. But Toy Story 3 is probably considered like one of the most perfectly wrapped up endings. Right?
Then perhaps a better example would be, again going back to Star Wars, The Force Awakens to Return of the Jedi. Is like the Force
Return of the
Awakens
Jedi. Well, the difference is because Return of the Jedi wasn't a perfectly wrapped
well
ending.
that too, but like also I mean,
but that's the difference though. But that's not dismissible. That's the point I'm trying to make.
But like it does still like I mean like Darth Vader is redeemed. Darth Vader died. Like then they're all then together.
I kind of don't think they should have made new ones.
Yeah,
I would have been interested in maybe seeing like a continuation of that story in a lower stakes setting. Like I always said that they should have made the if they were going to do sequel stories, they should do it like in the style of like the Rebels TV show. And just do a TV show about what happened 30 years after.
A lower stakes continuation? Isn't that exactly what you're saying Toy Story 4 would be?
No, but it's not a film. It's not a like main stage. I think what's going on is that you are so appreciative of the quality of all the films that you're giving it the benefit of the doubt. But I think theoretically,
I get it. I totally get it. I still.
Because I think your argument is more based on like, well, they made all the other ones are good, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But I don't think in theory you actually think that Toy Story 4 is a great idea.
Well,
I don't think deep down
it should be we should approach with apprehension in the same way they should approach with apprehension. But what I can say is
it can be amazing, and then I'll eat my words. But my point being is that even if it's amazing, should they make it? Just because you create a great movie. Should you have made it?
Well, I think there is a certain degree of boldness to the idea of like you're using like this whole then thing with Bo Peep, and what I can say like as the biggest Toy Story fan you can imagine, Bo Peep like out of like everything and everyone is like while I still like her, is still then kind of like then the weakest. Like I said like I liked her a little bit more in Toy Story 2 even though she had less to do like kind of like the weakest like thing. So, like, to, like, then take that, based on the whole movie around it, and, like, make it, like, so... To make it great, and to really then make it worthwhile, that then... Yeah. Like, there's something interesting about that. In the same way that, like, say, like... Like, this is kind of random, but, like, the 4th season of BoJack Horseman uses this character that... Before... And it's his mom. And, like, before that, like, I understood the purpose of the character. They hadn't really then gone too much into her, but I was kind of always, like... Yeah, like I get it, but like I understand like BoJack as a character is like then this sort of like obviously very very like tormented, didn't have a great childhood. Like I get it. She has then that surface level purpose that she's like toxic. Like okay, like sort of then weak. But then the 4th season becomes very much about her, And in many ways, it's like the best season. And it's like shocking, like how great it is, how much they're able to expand and really give this character depth. Give what's then was like kind of like in ways like the like not to say the worst thing, but like the thing that was like most just sort of like, oh, okay, that's there too, and make it like so central and make it so great. So I think there is then something to this idea of then approaching a fourth installment by extension of this one thing that was also sort of then there that like didn't have much depth, that there's a lot left to expand upon because there is more room.
That's predicated on, that just feels predicated on a lot of moving pieces, and also it feels like it feels like that took you about 5 minutes to explain. That's a very complex workaround to try to justify the film. I think you have such an affinity for Pixar that you're gonna go, no, because I think you have so much confidence in them. But I know I'm not alone. That most people in 2017 do not have as much confidence in Pixar as they used to. So I do not think this is a crazy assertion to make based on what I'm about to say.
Okay.
The reason there's one reason why Toy Story 4 is being made.
One, just one.
No, yeah, no, it is not because anybody gives a rat's ass about like continuing this story in this manner, because it's the only. No, actually, that's not true. It's not the only one. Or is it?
What do you?
Did Finding Dory make $1 billion? Mm-hmm. Okay, so Toy Story 3 is not the only movie to make $1 million. Pixar movie.
Not the only Pixar movie. No.
But it's probably their most profitable franchise.
In terms of like the movies, not because like Cars, I guess is technically.
Sure, yeah, I mean the movies.
Yeah.
Of course, they're gonna make a fourth one. Mm-hmm. The way that Pixar, the way it's been integrated into the Disney bureaucracy and business model, it at a certain point now, it's not just about like John Lasseter and Andrew Stanton and Pete Docter sitting in a room going like, what stories do we want to bring to the world? No, a lot of the decisions are being fueled by money. Mm-hmm. There's no way that Toy Story 4 is even conceived unless someone in the higher up echelon of Disney says, well, could you guys consider it? And then they bounce around ideas and they come to this idea and they're like, that could be kind of interesting. And then they pitch it. Mm-hmm. Right? There was no strong artistic need. No one woke up in the heat of night with this story idea and was like, I am compelled to tell this story.
I don't think that's fair to say yet. But I
think the pieces are there, but here's the difference: is that I'm using what information we do know, whereas to say that that's not true is to take a leap of faith and say, oh well, we can't know until we see the movie. But all the pieces are there, and everything we know about the way Disney works and operates.
Well, either way, it's a leap of faith by that logic. But like I think what it then comes down to is this idea.
It could be great, but the impetus for its creation. But why does Sully that? No pun intended. Why Sully? Right, yeah. The terrific ending that like is iconically end. Mm-hmm. Like it's probably the most end that people like of our generation are aware of. Mm-hmm. Why sully that? Mm-hmm. At least at the groundwork of it. Mm-hmm. Other than we want to make a lot of money. This can make a shit ton of money. It could be great, mm-hmm. but the original impetus for its creation is that.
Well, what I have to point to is how long it's taken, in the sense that. If it really then was up to like, well, it made that much money, you're going to do another one, then they would have then just like announced a fourth one.
But the reason why it's taking so long is because their box office hasn't been as strong in the past 7 years.
But so what are you saying? You're saying that they weren't going to do another one, and then their box office is dwindling, so then they were approached to do a fourth one, and that's why a fourth one's... Is that what you're saying?
Potentially. Because Brave didn't do great. Monster University, I don't think, did great. Good Dinosaur didn't do great.
Monsters University definitely made a lot of money,
but not like their normal huge redefining animation box office numbers.
No, it made like for example, like I think it made more money than like Wall-E. I think it's like on like the higher tier of like box office wise. It's like in the 700 millions.
Oh, that even okay. Yeah. Forget Monster University then.
Yeah.
But Brave. Mm-hmm. Cars 2, I don't think the box office was good.
The box office for Cars 2 wasn't. The box office for Brave, again, like fine.
The Good Dinosaur.
Inside Out, though.
But I'm saying by the time they started developing Toy Story 4 was probably before Inside Out came.
Well, yeah.
So my point being is that they started to have a string of either commercial and or critical blunders. Uh-huh. with Cars 2, Brave, Monster University. Even Monster University made money. People weren't super particularly hot about it. No one really talks about it.
Other than you.
Other than me. Yeah. I love it. I'm very excited to watch it.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I'm going to put it too high. Like, people are going to get mad. Like, you'll get mad because I put it above whatever movie. It's going above Up, at the very least. Probably above Toy Story 3.
Like,
probably.
Okay.
I'm just warning you now, so you can plan your murder methods now.
All right.
But
I'm going to blink back the tears.
My point being is that, for me, we can always talk about, well, we don't know until we see the film. And that's true. And maybe it'll be a great film. My point being is that it feels very, I don't want to say cash grabby, but the impetus of it, I think, like the story, from what we know about the film already, does not seem like there's a strong, it seems like a very, like, touch and go story. It could be great.
I get it. I will say as well, a lot of fans did want to see more Bo Peep. This is like Toy Story fans were like, oh, like it's a shame he wasn't in the third one. Like I know, like, oh well, but like if you're able to do it in such a way that it's able to provide a comment on this idea of a relationship,
because if it's not good, then now that's the last Toy Story movie. If it's not even that,
of course, there's obviously a risk involved.
But I think the intentions were good enough for Toy Story 3, and the passion was there. Whereas I just don't feel that. I don't get a sense of that with this film, and not like, oh, we'll compete, like, relax, like you don't even see any like promotion for it. Like there really hasn't been a lot to discuss about it. So I'm not trying to say like, oh, I need to see, you know, whoever is directing it go out there and like be enthusiastic. That's not what I'm saying. But just like all the circumstances that I'm aware of about this film makes me question the motivation for making the film. At the end of the day, the motivation for the film should not be money. You know, even if it is a financial thing, any movie like that, even a financial movie that's made for money, like the director is like basically tricking the studio into thinking it'll make a lot of money. But at the end, the core is someone wanting to tell the story.
They want the moolah. Got it. I like what I see is a potential for Woody to further then expand upon what his existence means to him, in the sense that it's less about, okay, he's had an owner, he's then with Bonnie. Is there anything then more that then he didn't hold on to as much because he prioritized then this notion of the owner and held it up so much.
That'd be interesting.
And then getting then Bo Peep.
But that seems tangential.
Also,
to
then
that
this idea,
you just said.
But that is then, like, fulfilling a love life is tangential. Like that's the whole idea of then having then a greater purpose, being able to then find
toys,
love,
but love, like, what is that like Buzz and Jessie aren't really in like a romantic thing. It's more played for laughs than like. Anything.
But like
I don't see myself being interested in a movie about like two toys being in love. Like, how do they consummate that love? Like, I don't want to be gross, but like,
it's about what it means to them, and if they approach it,
they were more flirty than they were.
But if they approach it in such a way that it's an interesting analog to like a real human relationship, and also taking advantage of the fact they're toys. Again, I've proposed this hypothetical idea of Woody then is able to then find Bo Peep again, and Bo Peep is still. Is still alive, but is literally with another Woody doll, as if to suggest that when we then move on from someone, it's like then we're conjuring up, or then a replacement that is literally then they're fulfilling the same place in our hearts, and by all extents, by all purposes, they are the same person. But like in this case, because we're doing it with toys, we literally have the opportunity to have it then be the same like figure. So. That could then be interesting. There's potential here. I'm just spitballing. But yeah. I think they could do it and really make it great. But we'll see. We'll see.
It's an abomination.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. I'm cutting this off now because it's way too late.
Well, you're the one who wanted to talk about Toy Story 4. Yeah. We could have stopped there. But you were like, let's talk about Toy Story 4.
Well, we needed to talk about it. But now it's too late because it's 3 a.m. Okay. For those of you who... Because you...
For those of you listening in real time.
Listen in real time. It's 3 a.m.
Okay.
And I have class, and I have to get up in about 4 hours to get ready for class. So,
okay.
Thanks so much for listening. Next week, we're going to be talking about the real best Pixar film.
The Cars
2. Thanks so much, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.